Welcome to Newsnight.
Thank you so much.
Well, spokesperson, the loss of life of even one person is unacceptable. But I still want to ask you this. 16 people remain unaccounted for. The last time you told us 43 people had lost their lives. Have any of those numbers changed? What can you tell us tonight?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to the studio. The numbers that we have been able to get from West Pokot remain the same. That is 43. And out of that 43, the last time we checked, 36 had been accounted for, and 7 were missing. That number has not changed, and if there is any additional number that has come up, it might have been a number that perhaps death that might have occurred out of other causes, but not necessarily from the mudslide. Okay, let's talk about the humanitarian crisis that must be on the ground. For example, we are told that over 1,500 people were left homeless, specifically in West Pokot alone. What is the resettlement plan? Right now, the government has been able to establish various centers where those that have lost their homes are currently being provided assistance. And the government has also, put in place various intervention mechanisms to ensure that those that are in camps are getting relief supplies, they're getting medicine, they're getting food, but also aware that they cannot stay there forever, that at some point they must go home. So what the government is doing is that they're putting measures in place to ensure that as they go back home to restore their lives, they're given things that can be able to make them start off lives, to things like, building materials, so those are things that the government has put in place to ensure that when they go home, they got something to start.
Now, let's talk about the term you're using, go home. Are you allowing them to return to properties and land that was effectively displaced when the landslides took place, or have you found new locations for them?
Most of them actually are willing to go back where they came from.
But does that make sense, spokesperson?
It does make sense because even previously when we were asking them to move so that they can be able to escape from areas that were threatened with disaster, that kind, many of them are unwilling to move for reasons that they have got title deeds of those places, and in addition to that, they also had property. And in those areas, property like maybe,
I mean that's all houses. Fair and good, spokesperson. Sorry for interrupting you, but are you telling me you're comfortable allowing them to return to areas that we know...
The disaster can strike anywhere. Any place can be disaster-stricken. So yes, there's places that were affected, indeed, but those places belong to them. So as other alternative areas are being looked into, they'll have to go to those places. And the government is providing them assistance to ensure that they go back to those places. Okay,
can you give me timelines? And I'm still a bit hazy about, you allowing them to go back. Do you have timelines on when alternative places to relocate will be found?
The timelines have been worked out. The camp cannot be there forever. Within the next 3 months, once, everything has been put in place to ensure that they have got sufficient necessary material to make them go back and begin new livelihood, then they'll be allowed to go back. So looking at about 3 months or so.
Okay. We have seen extreme weather patterns in 2019, places where it was drought maybe 2-3 months ago. We are now seeing a lot of water there. What is the water harvesting plan?
Thank you very much. The government has got measures in place. The government is also rolling out various projects to ensure that what we are witnessing today or now do not happen again, not in the same scale that we are witnessing.
Can you give me specifics?
The government is actually building ponds, the government is building troughs, the government is building dams, medium and large-scale dams in many parts of the country. Indeed, literally, almost every country has a dam that the government is constructing to ensure that what we are witnessing today do not happen again.
Okay, maybe just to be a bit more specific, how much money has been allocated for this? Who is in charge? Government is a big body. Let's talk. I want specifics from you, spokesperson.
As of now, the government has put aside 6.1 billion to ensure that all those that have been affected, the areas that have also been affected in terms of infrastructure, have been restored. So yes, we have a budget of 6.1 billion. Okay, and
you're attempting on this show to promise that the effects of floods that we've seen in the past should not be seen in the future? Is that...
You cannot, as a government, what we're trying to do really is to ensure that of course you cannot stop disaster from happening. But what we're trying to do as a government is that as and when disaster happen, the impact is lessened. So there are mechanisms and programs in place that the government is ensuring that if those are implemented fully, then any future disaster will not have the same kind of impact as this one.
Okay. Yeah. Tell me this, and this is a question that came in from one of our viewers. If they're in a part of the country where they suspect a landslide could happen, they see the potential for flooding, who do they call?
There are various structures at grassroots level. So there are several mechanisms in place and structures that are supposed to respond to such kind of distress call. So if you go to the we have GAO system that is represented up to the grassroots level, from the sub-chief to the local chief to the heads of various disaster committees within the sub-county level. So there are various levels that anybody can report to in case they feel that where they are is threatened. Okay.
Spokesperson, let me get this in as my final question. What guarantee is there that once people move back to their land, that you as government will follow up to ensure that you evacuate them if this was to ever happen again in the future? My concern is that if they go back to the land where a landslide happened, what is to protect them in the future if you don't resettle them right now?
You cannot necessarily predict where landslide is going to happen. But what we're trying to do is to ensure that we educate them to be able to plant trees, because some of what we're seeing is because of most of the ground is bare. The trees have been cut out, there's no grass, there is no even building of gabions. So we are actually trying to educate them to ensure that when they go back to those places, they plant trees. And this is something that even the Minister of Environment, Natural Resources has taken up to ensure that that 10% tree cover will try in a big way to reduce such kind of disaster that we are witnessing today.
Thank you, Spokesperson. I hope that will be sufficient. We hopefully will talk to you again in the next 3 months when you can tell us more, because you've said those are the timelines you're looking at. Thank you for joining us on Newsnight.